There are moments in life you never forget, not because they're loud, but because everything becomes different after them. For me, it wasn't the day my father died. It wasn't the day I became a single mother. It wasn't even the day my sister stole from me. It was the moment my 8-year-old daughter looked at me with tears in her eyes and quietly asked, "Mom, are we not part of Grandma's family anymore?" I smiled, I lied. And that lie broke my heart. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing where this amazing community is from. And if stories about family, betrayal, and finding the strength to stand back up mean something to you, please subscribe to Sad Drama Stories. Every story here reminds us that even after the deepest hurt, healing is still possible. My name is Teresa Collins. I'm 33 years old, and if you had met me back then, you probably would have called me the dependable one. The woman who always found a way, the one who never complained, the one everyone called when life became inconvenient. I worked as a bookkeeper at a small veterinary clinic outside Atlanta. Nothing glamorous. Just invoices, payroll, spreadsheets, and making sure every number matched before I went home. Funny thing about numbers, they're honest. People aren't always. Every weekday looked almost identical. My alarm rang at 5:30 every morning. I'd quietly make lunches while my kids were still asleep. Peanut butter and honey for Lily, turkey and cheese for Jake because he refused to eat anything with little seeds. Then came the morning rush. Missing shoes, lost homework. One child couldn't find a backpack. The other suddenly remembered a school project 5 minutes before we had to leave. If you're a parent, you already know exactly what that looks like. Somehow, we always made it. Barely. After work, I'd pick them up, make dinner, help with homework, read bedtime stories, kiss them goodnight. Then, when the apartment finally became quiet, I'd sit alone at my kitchen table. Calculator, coffee, bills. That little kitchen table had seen more tears than anyone ever knew. Not because I hated my life, because I wanted to give my children a better one. Every month, I secretly moved $150 into a savings account. Some months that money meant saying no to new clothes. Some months it meant eating pasta for 3 nights, but I never touched it. That money had one purpose: the beach. 4 days every summer where my kids could forget we didn't have much, where they could collect shells instead of worrying about grown-up problems. They never knew how hard I worked to make those trips happen. And honestly, I hoped they never would. My father understood sacrifices like that. He'd spent 40 years working as a plumber. His hands always looked rough, his knees always hurt. But somehow he still smiled every time he came home. 4 years before everything fell apart, I stood beside his hospital bed. He looked tired, smaller somehow, like life had slowly been stealing pieces of him. He reached beneath his blanket and handed me a large envelope. Not my older sister, me. Inside were insurance papers, bank information, bills, everything. "Take care of your mother," he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "I promise." I meant every word. After he passed away 3 months later, I kept that promise. I paid off his medical bills, fixed the roof over Mom's house, replaced her broken water heater, put the remaining insurance money into an emergency savings account in her name. Then I started sending her $300 every month from my own paycheck. No one asked me to. I just couldn't imagine my mother choosing between groceries and medicine. My sister, Denise, never contributed. There was always an excuse. Money was tight. The kids needed something. Life was expensive. I believed her. Maybe because I wanted to. Maybe because believing people is easier than accepting they're using you. Looking back now, I wasn't supporting my family. I was carrying them. And the heavier they became, the quieter I became, until one afternoon, my little girl asked a question that changed everything. "Mom," I looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, holding her backpack against her chest. "Why does Grandma only want us when Aunt Denise isn't there?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out because sometimes the hardest part of being a parent isn't protecting your children from strangers. It's protecting them from the people who are supposed to love them. And that was the moment I realized something inside my family had already broken. I just didn't know how much worse it was about to become. After Dad died, I kept telling myself one thing: families go through difficult seasons. I repeated those words so many times that I almost believed them. Whenever Mom called because the water bill was higher than usual, I sent money. When her refrigerator stopped working, I paid for the repair when she needed groceries before payday. I filled her pantry. She always thanked me. Sometimes she even cried. And every single time I'd hang up feeling like I had done exactly what Dad would have wanted. Looking back now, I don't regret helping my mother, not for a second. What hurts is realizing I was helping people who had quietly stopped seeing me as family. To them, I had become the solution to every financial problem. My sister Denise never offered to split expenses. There was always another excuse. Her car needed repairs. The kids had school fees. Money was tight. I believed her because, honestly, I wanted to. It's painful admitting someone you love is taking advantage of you. Sometimes believing the lie feels easier than accepting the truth. Every summer reminded me of Dad. He loved the beach. We never stayed in expensive resorts, just a small rental close enough to hear the waves at night. Dad used to wake us before sunrise and we'd walk along the shoreline looking for seashells. He'd always say, "The best ones are the ones everyone else walks past." I still think about that sometimes. After he was gone, I promised myself my children would have those same memories. So every month I quietly added a little money to our beach fund. Sometimes it was only $50, sometimes $100, sometimes nothing at all. But I never gave up on it, because those few days by the ocean weren't really vacations. They were little pieces of happiness I wanted my children to remember forever. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. It was my niece Madison's birthday. Mom's backyard was full of balloons. Kids were chasing each other through the grass. Jake somehow managed to get chocolate frosting all over his shirt within 5 minutes. Lily was helping Madison unwrap presents. Watching them laugh made me smile. For a little while, it felt like we were a normal family again. I should have known moments like that never lasted very long. Denise found me inside while I was refilling the lemonade. She leaned against the kitchen counter like she wanted to have an ordinary conversation. "There've been some changes to the beach trip," I smiled. "Oh, did you find a different house?" She nodded. "We're going to Hilton Head this year." "That sounds nice." Then she looked at me. Her expression didn't change, not even a little. "But you and your kids aren't coming." For a second, I honestly thought she'd made a joke that simply didn't land. I even waited for her to laugh. She didn't. "I'm sorry, what?" "My kids don't really want yours there," she shrugged. "And honestly, it'll be cheaper with fewer people." Cheaper. That word stayed with me, not because of the money, because she said it while talking about 2 children. My children, as if Lily and Jake were extra luggage instead of family. I couldn't find a single word to say. I just stood there looking at the woman I'd grown up with, wondering when she had become someone I no longer recognized. Then something caught my eye. Across the living room, Mom was standing beside her purse, and in her hand was a debit card. Mine, the emergency card I'd trusted her with years ago. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I didn't know why yet, but I suddenly had the feeling this vacation wasn't the real story. It was only the beginning. I couldn't stop staring at that debit card. It sounds strange now. Out of everything Denise had just said, that little piece of plastic bothered me the most. Maybe because deep down I already knew something wasn't right. I just wasn't ready to admit it. Have you ever had that feeling when your instincts are screaming at you, but your heart keeps making excuses? That's exactly where I was. I walked over to my mom as calmly as I could. She smiled the moment she saw me, the same warm smile I'd known my whole life. "Everything okay?" she asked. I looked down at her hand. "Mom, why do you still have my debit card?" For just a split second. Her smile disappeared, then it came right back. "Oh, honey, I completely forgot to give it back." Forgot? 4 years. She'd had it for 4 years. I wanted to believe her. I really did, because believing your own mother is lying to you. That's not something your mind accepts easily. Before I could say another word, Denise walked back into the room carrying a tray of drinks. She looked at us, then at the card. Without missing a beat, Mom slipped it into her pocket. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. "We were just talking," Mom said. Denise smiled. "Good, that was it. No explanation, no awkwardness, nothing." Can you imagine how confusing that felt? It was almost like I was the only person in the room who thought any of this was unusual. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I smiled when people talked to me. I helped clean up. I even packed leftovers into containers before leaving. But inside, something had changed. On the drive home, nobody spoke for several minutes. Then Lily quietly asked, "Mom, yeah, sweetheart? Did Aunt Denise really mean we're not going?" I looked at her in the mirror. She wasn't crying somehow. That made it even harder. She was just trying to understand. "I don't know," I answered softly. She looked back out the window. I was already thinking about building another sandcastle. Those words hit me harder than Denise ever could. Kids dream so innocently. She wasn't thinking about hotels or money or who paid for what. She was thinking about sandcastles, about collecting seashells with her little brother, about eating ice cream after watching the sunset, and without even realizing it. The adults had stolen those memories before they ever happened. That night, after the kids were asleep, I made myself a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for proof that I was overreacting. Instead, I found something completely different. Every beach vacation from the past 4 years was saved in a folder: receipts, reservations, bank statements. I started comparing them. At first, I didn't notice anything. Then, pattern after pattern began jumping off the screen. The beach house deposit, paid by me; groceries, mostly me; gas, me; beach equipment, me again. Even the matching t-shirts everyone wore in the family photos, I'd paid for those too. I leaned back in my chair and covered my face with both hands. How had I missed this? Or maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe I hadn't missed it at all. Maybe I just convinced myself that keeping the peace was worth the price. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Denise. "Don't worry, Mom said everything's under control." I frowned. Everything? What exactly was everything? Before I could even reply, another message appeared for only a second. Then it disappeared. She'd unsent it, but not before I'd read the first few words. "Just use Teresa's card." I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could actually hear it. They weren't talking about asking me. They weren't talking about borrowing money. They were talking as if my debit card already belonged to them. And in that moment, the vacation stopped being the real problem. The real problem was that my own family had started treating my kindness like it was something they owned. And trust me, that realization hurts a lot more than losing a vacation. I wish I could tell you I confronted them the very next day, that I stormed into Mom's house, took back my debit card, and demanded answers. But that's not what happened. When you've spent your whole life being the peacemaker, standing up for yourself feels almost like doing something wrong. So instead, I called my bank. The woman on the phone was kind. After verifying my account, she asked, "How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath. "I need to know if anyone has tried using my debit card recently." There was a brief pause while she checked my account. I remember staring at the steam rising from my coffee. It had already gone cold. "Funny how you notice little things when you're nervous." She came back a few moments later. "There haven't been any successful transactions." I let out the breath I'd been holding. Then she continued. "But there were 2 authorization attempts yesterday evening." Yesterday. The same afternoon Denise told me we weren't invited. The same afternoon I saw my debit card in Mom's hand. Can you see why my heart started racing? I already knew what I was about to hear. I just didn't want it to be true. "Were they declined?" I asked quietly. "Yes." "Why?" "The purchase exceeded your daily spending limit." I thanked her, ended the call, and just sat there. I didn't cry, not yet. I simply stared at the kitchen wall. Because someone hadn't just thought about using my card, they had actually tried. Without asking, without telling me, without even feeling guilty enough to hide it properly. That hurt more than I can explain. Money comes back, trust doesn't. I immediately locked the card through my banking app and ordered a replacement. It took less than 2 minutes. 4 years of trust, gone in 2 minutes. About an hour later, my phone rang. "Mom," I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hi, sweetheart." She sounded unusually cheerful, the kind of cheerful people use when they're trying to pretend everything is normal. "Hi, Mom." We talked about the weather, the kids, her garden, nothing important. Then almost casually she asked, "So, everything okay with your bank?" There it was, not, "How are you?" Not, "Are the kids all right?" The bank. I felt my stomach sink. Why wouldn't it be? Oh, no reason. No reason. I don't think I've ever hated those 2 words more, because there was a reason. She just didn't know I already knew it. "I was just wondering," she added. I smiled even though she couldn't see me. "Everything's fine." The call ended less than a minute later. She'd gotten the answer she was looking for, just not the one she'd expected. 10 minutes later, Denise called. I let it ring. Then she called again and again. 5 missed calls in less than an hour. That wasn't concern, that was panic. I still didn't answer. Instead, I drove to school to pick up Lily and Jake. The moment Jake climbed into the back seat, he held up a crayon drawing. "Look what I made!" It was the beach, blue water, a yellow sun, 3 stick figures holding hands. Me, him, and Lily, no grandma, no Aunt Denise, no cousins. "Just us, I drew our vacation," he said proudly. I smiled. "It looks beautiful." Then he said something I'll never forget. "We don't need lots of people to have fun. Do we, Mom?" I had to look out the windshield for a second because my eyes suddenly filled with tears. Kids have a way of healing wounds they don't even know you have. That little drawing reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Maybe I wasn't losing a vacation. Maybe I was being given the chance to create better memories with the people who truly loved each other. That evening, curiosity finally got the better of me. I listened to Denise's first voicemail. She sounded frustrated. "Teresa, call me back. Mom's card isn't working anymore." I listened again, and then it hit me. She didn't say, "Your card," she said, "Mom's card." Can you imagine that? Somewhere along the way, my emergency debit card had stopped being mine in their minds. They'd convinced themselves it belonged to them. And honestly, that realization hurt far more than the money ever could. Because that's when I finally understood something. They weren't just taking advantage of my kindness anymore, they were expecting it. The next morning, the phone finally stopped ringing. It was almost strange. After dozens of missed calls and voicemails, the silence felt loud. I made breakfast like I always did. Pancakes for Jake, fruit for Lily because she insisted pancakes were too heavy before school. The normal little routines somehow made everything feel less overwhelming. I think that's one of the beautiful things about children. No matter how messy life becomes, they still remind you to keep living. After dropping them off at school, I drove home instead of going straight to work. I needed answers. Real ones, not excuses. When I pulled into Mom's driveway, Denise's SUV was already there. I sat in my car for almost a full minute. Can I be honest with you? I wasn't scared of an argument. I was scared of hearing the truth, because once someone tells you exactly who they are, you can never unknow it. I walked to the front door and knocked. Mom answered almost immediately. She looked surprised, then nervous. "Teresa, what are you doing here?" "I think you know." She stepped aside without saying a word. Denise was sitting at the kitchen table with a laptop open. The moment she saw me, she quickly closed it. That told me everything. Nobody hides something innocent. I looked at both of them. "I want my debit card." Mom slowly reached into her purse and placed it on the table. She didn't apologize, she didn't explain, she just pushed it toward me. I picked it up and slipped it into my wallet. Then I asked the question that had been keeping me awake all night. "Who tried to use it?" Silence. I looked at Denise, then at Mom. Neither one answered, so I asked again. "Who?" Finally, Denise sighed dramatically. "Oh my gosh, Teresa, you're making this a much bigger deal than it is." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A bigger deal? It was just a mistake. "A mistake? Yes," she crossed her arms. "We thought Mom's emergency card was still active." I stared at her. "No," I spoke calmly. "You thought my emergency card was yours to use." She rolled her eyes. "It would have only been for the vacation." "Only? Did you notice that word? People always use words like only when they're trying to make something terrible sound reasonable. Only a few $100s, only one time, only family. Funny how it's always only when it's someone else's money." Mom finally spoke. "We were going to pay you back." I looked at her for a long moment. "Were you?" Neither of them answered because we all knew the truth. There was never a plan to pay me back. There never had been. Denise leaned forward. "You make more money than we do." I blinked. "So that makes it okay?" "No," she shrugged. "It just makes it easier for you." Can you imagine hearing that? Years of working overtime, skipping things I wanted, saving every extra dollar, and somehow, that had become the reason they believed I should keep paying for everyone else. I suddenly felt exhausted, not angry, just tired of always being the responsible one, tired of carrying people who never even noticed the weight. I stood up. "I hope you have a nice vacation." Mom looked confused. "You're not coming?" I smiled sadly. "No, I don't think we've been invited." Neither of them stopped me as I walked to the door, and honestly, that hurt more than anything else we'd said, because for the first time, It felt like they were perfectly comfortable watching me leave. I got into my car and drove away. Halfway home, my phone rang. It was Lily's school. For one terrifying second, my heart dropped. I answered immediately. The secretary laughed softly. "Don't worry, everyone's okay." I let out a huge breath. "We're calling because your daughter entered the summer essay contest." "Oh, she wrote about her dream family vacation." I smiled. "That's wonderful." The secretary hesitated. "Mrs. Collins, yes, I thought you should know how she ended it." My smile slowly faded. The woman read the final sentence out loud. "It doesn't matter where we go, as long as my mom is smiling when we get there." I pulled my car to the side of the road, and for the first time since all of this started, I cried. I cried for a long time that day, not because of the money, not because of the vacation, but because of one simple sentence written by my little girl. "As long as my mom is smiling when we get there." Can I tell you something? Sometimes children see us more clearly than we see ourselves. Lily wasn't wishing for a bigger hotel. She wasn't wishing for a fancy beach house. She was wishing for me to be happy, and honestly, I couldn't remember the last time I was. That evening, I sat down with both of my kids after dinner. No television, no phones, just the three of us around our tiny kitchen table. "I need to ask you both something." Jake looked up from his coloring book. Lily nodded. "What if?" I smiled. "We took our own vacation this year." Jake's eyes immediately lit up. Just us, just us. "But where? I don't know yet." Lily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I don't care where we go. I just want to go together." I don't think she realized how much I needed to hear that. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. That night, I opened my laptop again, not to look at old receipts, not to compare expenses. This time, I searched for places we could afford. After almost an hour, I found a small beach cottage on Tybee Island. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, an old wooden porch, a little kitchen, 5 minutes from the beach. The photos weren't perfect. The furniture looked older. The paint was faded in a few places. But when I showed the pictures to Lily and Jake the next morning, you would have thought I'd booked a 5-star resort. Jake pointed excitedly at the tiny porch. "We can eat breakfast there," Lily smiled, "and watch the sunset every night." Neither one asked how big the rooms were or whether there was a swimming pool. Kids really are amazing, aren't they? They don't chase luxury, they chase memories. I booked it before I could change my mind. A week later, our suitcases were packed. The car was full of snacks, beach towels, and enough crayons to survive an entire summer. As we pulled onto the highway, Lily reached over and turned on Dad's old road trip playlist. I hadn't heard those songs in years. For a moment, it felt like he was riding with us again. Halfway there, my phone started buzzing. "Mom," I ignored it. A few seconds later, Denise, then Mom again, then Denise. Call after call after call. Can you guess what my first thought was? Not, "I wonder if they miss me." It was, "Something went wrong." Because people usually remember the dependable person the moment they need them. I kept driving. About 30 minutes later, a text message appeared from Denise. "Call me ASAP, it's important." I didn't. Another message. "The hotel canceled our reservation." Then another, "Please answer." I glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was asleep against the window. Jake was quietly humming along to the music. For the first time in years, there was no stress in my car, just peace. And I wasn't willing to trade that peace for another family emergency. Whatever had happened, they were finally going to have to figure it out without me, and somehow, that felt like the beginning of a brand new life. I didn't answer a single call, not from Mom, not from Denise, not from anyone. For the first time in years, I chose peace over guilt. And I can't even describe how strange that felt. You know what's funny? When you're the person who always fixes everyone else's problems, the first time you stop, people suddenly act like you're the one who's changed. But I hadn't changed. I was just finally protecting myself. By the time we reached Tybee Island, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. Jake rolled down the window. "I can smell the ocean," I laughed. "So can I." The cottage looked exactly like the pictures, small, simple, a little worn around the edges, but somehow it already felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in a long time. That evening, we walked to the beach barefoot. The sand was still warm from the afternoon sun. Jake ran straight toward the water. Lily quietly slipped her hand into mine. Mom, yeah. She looked up at me and smiled. I like this vacation better, I smiled back. Why? Because, she shrugged, nobody here is pretending. I actually had to stop walking. Can you imagine hearing something like that from your own child? Children notice so much more than we think they do. They don't always understand the reasons, but they always feel the tension. That night we sat on the porch eating pizza from a little restaurant down the street. Nothing expensive, just the three of us laughing over Jake dropping pepperoni into his lemonade. It wasn't perfect. It was real, and honestly, I hadn't realized how badly I needed something real. The next morning, I finally listened to Denise's voicemails, one after another. The Hilton Head trip had completely fallen apart. The hotel reservation had been canceled because the payment never went through. The beach house they'd wanted was gone. The prices for every other rental had doubled. Some family members refused to go anymore, others blamed Denise. And then came the voicemail that told me everything. Teresa, she sounded exhausted. I guess I never realized how much you actually did. I sat there for a long time after hearing those words, not because they made me happy, because they came too late. Respect that only appears after someone loses your help isn't really respect. It's dependence. A week later, we drove home with sunburned noses, sandy shoes, and enough seashells to fill half the trunk. Jake insisted every single shell was rare. Lily had taken nearly 200 pictures of sunsets. As I unpacked the car, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Mom. It was short. I'm sorry. No excuses. No explanations, just 2 words. I read it 3 times, then I replied with 4. I love you, Mom, because I did. But loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to keep hurting you. That was a lesson it took me 33 years to learn. Today, things are different. Mom and I still talk, but there are boundaries now, clear ones. Denise and I will probably never have the relationship we once had, and strangely enough, I'm okay with that because peace is worth protecting every single time. As for Lily and Jake, they still ask when we're going back to that little cottage. Not because it was the nicest place we'd ever stayed, because that's where we laughed the most. Looking back now, I don't think my family actually excluded us from their vacation. I think life was quietly giving us a better one where I finally stopped trying to earn love that should have been given freely. One where my children learned that family isn't measured by who shares your last name. It's measured by who makes you feel like you belong. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. Never let people convince you that your kindness gives them permission to use you. Kindness is a gift, not an obligation. And the people who truly love you will never expect you to sacrifice yourself just to keep them comfortable. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what part stayed with you the most. And if you enjoy stories about family, betrayal, healing, and finding the strength to choose yourself, I'd be honored if you subscribe to Sad Drama Stories. We have many more stories to share, and I'd love for you to be part of this little community. Thank you for spending your time with me, and until next time, take care of yourself.